What a chapter of My Hero Academia. I guess it's fitting to talk about the title of the chapter first, called Second Encounter, which is a direct reference to the first time Shigaraki ever was mentioned in the series and popped up for the first time, chapter 14, called Encounter. And this chapter is a direct correlation to that. There is so many parallels and things that are kind of a continuation of that chapter that it's kind of crazy to think about. Obviously, the titles. You have the chapter 14 called Encounter. This chapter is called Second Encounter. And the reason for this reference is because in chapter 14, Aizawa came face to face with Shigaraki for the first time, and he had to stand before Shigaraki and all the other villains there to protect the students of UA. He was pretty much the sole protector, holding back the main threats that was the Nomu, but also Shigaraki. And then with this chapter, chapter 275, Aizawa is tasked with the exact same thing. He has to stand before Shigaraki to protect his students and keep Shigaraki's rotten fingers off of Bakugo and Izuku. It's honestly emotional to think about that. Most likely, Horikoshi-sensei has been setting up this for a very long time now, and this could explain why, he got emotional the other week when he talked about how he had tears of joy. He was sad and happy at the same time. Most likely, this is a reference to that because he's been building up to this very moment where Aizawa finally encounters Shigaraki once again. So, to kind of talk about this in depth and the parallels, you have it to where at the end of the chapter, Shigaraki says, "You really are cool, Eraserhead." Now, this is also a direct correlation to what he said the first time to Aizawa when Aizawa, encountered him and stopped him from even being able to use his quirk. He's like, so cool, and all that. He was mocking Aizawa when he first met him. But when you look at this chapter, there is definitely a huge difference in Shigaraki's tone. The way it's presented in this chapter, he presents it in a way as like he's admiring Aizawa, like he truly is admiring him for his determination and willpower to stand before someone like him and not back down as a hero. It shows that it looks like Shigaraki has definitely changed considerably, and he is definitely admiring Aizawa for just the sheer courage that he is displaying at this moment. So I do think it's pretty cool. There is definitely some development we could see from Shigaraki in that moment, but also seeing development from Aizawa as well, because now he has even more of a reason to stand before Shigaraki, because he has had so many people die before him. He's had Crust die for him, sacrifice his life, literally, to protect Aizawa, because Aizawa is such an important character, one of the most important characters on the hero side besides Izuku, just because of what his quirk is actually capable of. And on top of that, you have Shirakumo that died a very long time ago, but it was supposed to be Aizawa that died instead. Many people have lost their lives to get Aizawa to where he's at right now. He has been protected, his quirk has been saved to be where he's at. And so, he realizes that his life, he's been saved, he's been brought to this very point to stand before Shigaraki. That's what his purpose in life is, which is honestly frightening, because that is definitely truth. I think out of everything that this series has presented is that Aizawa has definitely been a character to be presented in front of Shigaraki. He is the one character that is the counter to all villains. He could definitely counter almost any quirk, and especially All for One. So when you really think about it, Aizawa definitely has been born. It was fate. It was destined for him to finally stand before the new All for One. But the question is, will it turn out like it did in the first time he encountered Shigaraki? I do not believe so. I think it's going to extend upon it and make it a lot worse. So let's kind of reminisce and talk about what that first encounter was like with Shigaraki to kind of explain why this is actually very scary and there's death flags thrown on Aizawa. So, when Shigaraki and Aizawa first had their original fight, it was kind of one-sided. Shigaraki was losing somewhat, and Aizawa was holding his ground against, uneven numbers. He was by himself against a bunch of villains. But Shigaraki patiently waited from the sidelines, counting Aizawa's time he had to keep his eyes open until he had to blink or his hair brushed in front of his face, etc. He figured out Aizawa's weakness. He figured out how long it would take for he could finally counteract, and eventually he saw an opening and he did put his hand upon Aizawa, and Aizawa's entire elbow started to actually crack and turn to dust. Very slowly, isn't as strong as what Shigaraki is currently capable of, but Aizawa did take a blow from Shigaraki. So, you have Shigaraki already figuring out his weakness at that time, earlier on in the manga. And so, that goes to show that if Aizawa makes that same exact mistake, he's dead, because Shigaraki no longer has that slow destruction anymore. He could straight up decay you literally instantly. We have seen this man dust people in a fraction of a second. He just puts his hand on you and you're just gone. And so we know for a fact the slow pace of destruction would definitely not happen like it did in the past. If he put his hand on Aizawa, Aizawa's dead. There is no Quirk Eraser that's going to stop that. He will probably die or lose his entire arm or half his body instantly. There is just no coming back from that. So he cannot afford to blink. He cannot afford to let his hair brush in front of his eyes against this monster, because as soon as he does, it's lights out. So that is the current situation. So that puts in perspective on just how Shigaraki was able to kind of best him early on. And now Shigaraki is even more skilled, faster, stronger, with more quirks. But it doesn't just stop there. Now, at that time, it was very apparent that Shigaraki did lose. Like, he did lose his brief fight with Aizawa, because Aizawa technically did outsmart him. He had his quirk activate, and Aizawa was able to stop him briefly. But then the Nomu popped up, which was meant to fight All Might, and the Nomu just completely demolished Aizawa, shoved him to the ground, and Aizawa was not able to do anything. Now, I feel like this is obviously going to be a parallel to when Gigan appears to back up Shigaraki, because we know Gigan is coming. Gigan is definitely arriving to the battlefield with all of the League of Villains, and because of that, Gigan could be basically the Nomu in this situation, because even if you erase, Gigan's quirk, he probably has super strength regardless, so he will definitely be able to hold down someone like Aizawa, even without the usages of his quirk. So because of that, I feel like we're about to have a very similar situation, is that Gigan is going to be the Nomu, and this time, no one's going to come in and save Aizawa. Aizawa's straight up going to just get crushed or completely broken to where he's going to be mortally wounded and never be able to operate ever again as a hero. One of the two is potentially going to happen, which I feel like that's probably going to happen. Gigan's going to appear and it's going to be in reference to the Nomu. But there's another thing to talk about. Another thing is that we got to think about the quirk erasing bullets. That is another thing. Even though Shigaraki's quirk is technically kind of like stopped at this time, we don't really know the full limitations of All for One and all the quirks it steals, and if it can kind of go around, Aizawa's quirk eraser. We don't really know if that's possible yet. And because of that, Shigaraki might be capable of quickly flinging a bullet at Aizawa and completely deactivating his quirk permanently. However, there was some bullets that did fall out of Shigaraki's coat within this chapter. You clearly see some when he lands very briefly to kind of change his direction towards Izuku. Some of the bullets fall out of his coat. Now, I'm assuming not all of them did. He might have maybe 1 or 2 bullets left, but most of them did kind of fall out, which that's what the chapter tried to show. So I feel like he's only going to have a couple of shots at it, and Aizawa obviously will have no idea Shigaraki has something like that on him, so it's going to lead to the situation being even more dangerous than it already is. So it's kind of like, who's going to lose their quirk at this time? Is it going to be Endeavor? Is it going to be Aizawa? Honestly, it's probably going to be Aizawa, because as I've already talked about a lot, Aizawa is someone that has such a powerful quirk that it needs to kind of be gone, like for writing purposes alone, because Aizawa right now, he kind of undermines everything that Shigaraki is, because as long as he is around, Shigaraki will never really be able to demonstrate his full strength, his overwhelming power, and Izuku will not really be able to fully fight him by himself, etc. And I feel like Aizawa, because of just how OP he is, he needs to be dealt with. I don't want to see him die, but his quirk needs to be gone. And so if it's not death, his quirk needs to be erased or stolen, and one of the two is definitely going to happen. Which, by the way, I do want to mention something, by the way. Back in the early stages of My Hero Academia, Chapter 14, since I already mentioned it, you actually get to see a brief page or panel of Shigaraki scratching his neck, which is kind of like that reference to how his character trait is, how he's very irritated, and when he gets irritated or he doesn't like something, he scratches himself, and we know how that is incorporated with his entire character. So seeing him kind of scratch his neck at the time when he first, encountered Aizawa, it's kind of scary to just see how long Horikoshi has been planning things ahead. But okay, getting back on topic though, the point is that Aizawa is about to face off against literally the main villain of the story, and he's not going to win. It's not going to happen. However, it's very clear, though, thanks to Aizawa's save, he was able to save Ryukyu in this chapter. I think many might not have noticed that, but when Ryukyu went in to slash at Shigaraki, you had Shigaraki put his hand on her, claws coming in, and you noticed he looked over and he noticed that she wasn't disintegrating, and then he got launched into the air. If you notice, he was launched completely into the air, and the reason for that was because Ryukyu was able to land her blow, and Aizawa deactivated Shigaraki's decay quirk, because you could see a brief black silhouette in the background of a certain panel, showing that she is still alive and still A-okay, and we know how quick Shigaraki's dusting capabilities are, so because of that, we know for a fact that if she did get hit by it, she would already have been dead or gone, so she's not dead. So, Ryukyu is okay. So, anyone that was worried that she died, she did not die. Which, speaking of death, etc., let's talk about that fear panel. Honestly, best panel of the entire chapter. In terms of beauty and artwork, it's amazing. Like, it really displays so much emotion with just so little words. I mean, obviously, the whole image is just to represent death itself, and I think it did a very good job of that, because Shigaraki is so powerful, so strong, so ominous, that if you didn't see death, there's something wrong with you. But it just goes to show that his atmosphere that he is radiating from him is very similar to the original All For One, Shigaraki's mentor, and Izuku is scared. Bakugo is scared. They literally felt like they were about to die and get disintegrated in that very moment. I do like the visual representation of how they felt like they were dying in that moment. It's very different from when Izuku felt like he was going to vomit, or, he, felt like they were all just about to die. This is very different. They literally felt like they were getting destroyed while fighting a fruitless fight, like for no reason whatsoever, because they were not going to be able to come out of this in one piece. I just think it's really interesting, but the panel is just absolutely amazing. It really deserves so much praise. There was so much godlike art in that panel. Like, Horikoshi really did go in, just with the displaying of Shigaraki's overall aura against Izuku itself, and it just kind of lets you know that at this current point, Izuku is in no shape or form to be able to face something like that, because, like, I think that panel pretty much demonstrates that Izuku is so afraid, he's so fearful, that just his light, his goodness within him, is not able to stand before that just impending darkness. It's just like, I don't think he's ready. He's completely not ready. He's got to leave. He's got to go, and that image says enough. He's got to get out. So does Bakugo. They are not prepped or prepared to face such a monster. Gran Torino really said it the best. Like, you guys are not going to be able to face that monster. You cannot do nothing about it. Leave it up to the pros. You got to go. And I think what's probably about to happen is Izuku, Bakugo, and all the other certain students that are being tracked are probably going to be shipped away and go to a different part of the world at whatever, kind of America or something, because when you think about what happened to All Might when, he had to leave his teacher behind, he had to go to the States and go to America because he had to get away from All For One, for All For One couldn't really see him or find him. I feel like that's probably what's going to happen, is that all the characters are probably going to have to go over to a different country just to, escape Shigaraki in his sight, because Search most likely does have some form of weakness, which that is something to talk about. So it is once again confirmed in this chapter that Shigaraki does have the Search quirk. So if you didn't catch it from the last chapter, this chapter just straight up tells you that he does have the Search quirk. And because of that, anybody he lays eyes upon, he's able to understand their weakness and their information and all that. And so when he looks at everybody, he's going to know what their weakness is. And that's actually very scary. That's frightening, because when he looks upon someone like, Aizawa, he's going to know his weakness too. So because of that, that's going to be very scary. He's going to probably know how long that Aizawa's eyes can stay open before he actually closes them. So anything that these characters do is really not going to really stand up to what he's currently capable of. Okay, so anyways, let's talk about the brief section at the beginning with Shigaraki's display of his quirks. He used, air cannon, radio waves, and a jump ability. I know I mentioned it in the last chapter, but it needs to be said once again. It's very clear that whatever Shigaraki is using to travel, he's jumping. And it could be super strength or something else entirely, but the more and more I look at what he's doing to be able to change directions to go towards, Izuku, and how he landed within this chapter, it really does look like Pop Step's quirk. And I have been told that there is definitely some stuff going on with Pop Step in the latest chapters of My Hero Academia Vigilante. I'm kind of scared about that, because that pretty much lets me know, or it's implying that Most likely, Shigaraki does have his hands on Pop Step's leap quirk, which is frightening nonetheless, but also the way he landed as well within this chapter showed that there is definitely some form of landing with the quirk involved, which is what Pop Step's quirk has as well. Like, she's able to land safely, but the way Shigaraki kind of landed, he landed in a way that would definitely cause damage to him, which is what would happen to Pop Step as well if she landed wrongly. If she didn't land right, it would hurt her, and it looked like Shigaraki did that exact same thing. The way he landed sideways. So, like, he landed on the ground. You see, like, the pressure of the ground kind of change a little bit because of the sheer force and speed, but when he landed, you saw how he tilted his body sideways, and his head hits the ground just to twist his body into a completely different direction. It's honestly monstrous. It's not normal human movement the way he was moving. He had no regard for his body's well-being, just because I'm assuming, you know, regeneration, he doesn't need to worry anymore, but just like the way he lands, his face slams the ground, half his body slams the ground, he twists his body and jumps away with sheer force and speed is absolutely frightening. But it doesn't just stop there. We also get to see the capabilities of other quirks he's capable of. For instance, air cannon radio waves. He's able to completely cut the comms of all radio signals that Endeavor's entire squad has left. You know, being able to communicate with each other. He cuts them. But he doesn't just use radio waves, he also uses air cannon, and because of air cannon, he was able to use that force, the launch of that force, to launch himself over into front of Izuku and Bakugo. He got so close, he moved so quickly, he got right in front of them. His speed is... holy crap. Like, yeah, as I said, the kids, they're not ready. They can't fight that. There's just no way they can fight something that can literally go that fast, launch themselves that quick, and even take the damage of slamming themselves up against the ground just to change directions towards the south and all that. There's just no way you can do that. So... yeah, which, by the way, it does show, like, with that all going on, we do get to see, like, Endeavor briefly. Like, if you zoom in very closely, it appears like there's some form of Endeavor silhouette. So it does seem like he's not necessarily dead or damaged. Well, he might be damaged, but he's definitely not dead. He just got knocked away a little bit, which might delay his timing to get over to where Izuku, you know, and Bakugo were, or where, you know, Aizawa currently is against Shigaraki. It might delay him a bit, but overall, you know, he is probably going to be heading over there still, and he is definitely not dead, just knocked back probably a good ways because of just the sheer force of the blast. Literally was moving buildings and rubble that was left behind after the decay. So yeah, which, speaking of decay, there was a little bit of something revealed in this chapter about Shigaraki's decay, and that is the fact that if a little bit of rubble, like, okay, let's take an example, a box, and Shigaraki was to decay this box, and a piece of this box fell off, that little piece of decay on that box could actually spread to others. So that has been now officially stated, that Shigaraki's decay can spread from one object to the next if it falls onto something else. So what we saw, you know, the Wild Wild Pussycats doing in the previous chapter when she put up the sand wall, she was potentially making it worse, because when she was using the decay particles to turn them into, like, sand to manipulate the ground, it's very likely that she made that decay much worse, and those little particles probably fell on her, and it's over. So it's looking more and more likely that a lot of our heroes died in that city than we actually fought because of what they were doing. So yeah, 13's probably dead as well. So that's not good. That's really not good whatsoever. So yeah, chapter. Amazing. It's a fire chapter of My Hero Academia. I really cannot wait to see what happens next. But, and one last thing I'd like to mention before we wrap up this video, I do like the showcase of Bakugo's character development, but also how he's someone that still holds on to how he is potentially the fall of All Might, and that he wants to get back at Shigaraki basically for causing all this, and, you know, he wants to be able to right that wrong by bringing down the very person that kind of indirectly brought down All Might. So I do appreciate this little callback in Bakugo trying to do something, even though it's very apparent it's not going to be able to do anything, because, like I've already said many times in this video, they're not ready. I think I'm going to leave it at that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, you know, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.